This is Lecture 1.3, a continuation of Part 1 of the book Design After Capitalism. This lecture focuses on chapters 4 and 5, which turn from diagnosis to critique. The chapters covered in the previous two lectures covered the historical survey of the origins and transformations of design, capitalism, and economic theory, which sets us up for the critique, which is to ask, what's wrong with capitalism and what's wrong with design today, or what's wrong with design as it operates in capitalism? And so there's really two, stages to these critiques. There's a historical critique of capitalism and design, and there's a contemporary critique of capitalism and design. And I'm going to really simplify this stuff a lot, but focus on, primarily contemporary crises that are facing capitalism. And there are two contemporary crises that are simultaneous to capitalism today. One is a crisis of productivity, low productivity and stagnant wages. Another aspect of productivity is that these new digital forms of value creation are kind of running into artificial constraints that are set by scarcity mindsets and property logics that may now be outdated. We also have the very real presence of global warming, which has arrived with a vengeance and is really showing us that there are no externalities to capitalist growth, that we cannot continue to think that we can grab resources wherever we want and dump them wherever we want, that there are the balance sheet has been inaccurate all along when various forms of production don't account for the costs of things like this. On the other hand, the crisis of legitimacy has to do with the tremendous and growing economic disparity, not only globally, but also within what are called rich capitalist countries, including and maybe primarily the United States. That inequality is growing globally, but it's also growing inside already wealthy, advanced capitalist societies. Meanwhile, the economic power of global corporations has really superseded and subsumed political power, and it can be seen weakening democratic governance and oversight as well as taxation. So the legitimacy of capitalism is also being questioned again in ways that it hasn't been in maybe some time. I think the author Paul Mason puts it quite well. This is from his book titled Post-Capitalism. He says, the main contradiction today is between the possibility of free, abundant goods and information and a system of monopolies, banks, and governments trying to keep things private, scarce, and commercial. Everything comes down to the struggle between the network and the hierarchy, between old forms of society molded around capitalism and new forms of society that prefigure what comes next. So I'm going to just very lightly gloss over some of the big issues here, but there are several different categories in which sort of capitalism's claim to productivity can be seen not only having plateaued, but actually in decline. I'm drawing a lot of this work from the German economic sociologist Wolfgang Streeck. But the idea here is that, I think one of the most direct criticisms of capitalism on its own terms, in terms of what it's really supposed to do, is the fact that both total economic growth and actual wages for people participating in wage labor in capitalist production have been in steady decline since the 1970s. So since that sort of post-industrial turning point, we have just been in steady decline, and does not appear that we will ever return to that kind of so-called golden era of economic growth that seems to be kind of the ideal. In other words, it seems that the great engine of productivity has stalled, and it's taking ever more complicated shell games, heavy amounts of debt, heavy amounts of financial instruments, etc., to keep it afloat. So I hate to sort of bore a bunch of designers with a bunch of data and charts, but this one I think is quite telling. This is looking at productivity in relationship to compensation in the United States, first from 1948 up until 1973. So here's that sort of boom period, and then sort of what's happened since. And so we can see, well, productivity has increased, although it has tapered off quite a bit, only 72% compared to 96%. Compensation has just really flattened out. So the idea that real wages are barely above what they were 40 plus years ago is kind of central to this critique. That the idea that the system is not producing, it's not as productive as it thinks it can be, and it's also really not spreading that that productivity or spreading compensation for that productivity in ways that are even nearly equitable. Another big sort of claim to capitalism's value is the way that it has been accompanied with huge increases in life expectancy since the Industrial Revolution. And it is true that life expectancy has just skyrocketed since 1800. So in the year 1800, the global average life expectancy was only 29 years, which is shocking. But even more so, there was no country on the planet that had an average life expectancy higher than 40 years. Over the following 200 years, lots of advances in nutrition, medicine, and certainly I would not doubt that a lot of the sort of productivity and innovation from capitalism did really push that life expectancy up immensely, nearly doubling it over 200 years. However, it has been noted that in some of the wealthier capitalist countries, most notably the United States, not only has that life expectancy sort of tapered off, it's actually beginning to fall. And public health researchers who've studied this say that there's also direct economic connections to this. So the idea that areas of high unemployment also mean people have less coverage to health care, other issues related to lack of employment or lack of economic opportunity lead to mental health issues, etc. So we actually can begin to see some correlation between economy declining the life expectancy in the United States. Another category is ecology. We're looking here at total CO2 emissions by region from 1751 to 2018, have kind of marked out this period, this first part kind of between 1750 and 1850, which is generally the time of the Industrial Revolution where we start to see measurable CO2 emissions coming onto the chart. And then also have marked out here 1970, where we see some of the regions of the world, such as the EU 28, the United States, started to sort of plateau and start to bring down some of their CO2 emissions, but then we see it start to take off in places like China, India, other places in Asia, and sort of collectively only have climbed. And so again, the idea that that the environment, the sort of natural environment, natural resources are there as resources to feed the capitalist system are, again, I think clearly I would consider it an economic critique, because it's almost like an accounting error to think that this can just continue. Call out gender and racial inequality, which have always been part of the capitalist system and have also found changing forms over the years. And there's many different ways we could critique and talk about this. And I do bring that up in the book, looking at relationship between slavery, minority oppression, etc., and the ways that these things have advanced the economic growth of capitalism, particularly in the United States, as well as underpaid or underrepresented labor by women. I think the contemporary situation with the for-profit prison model is just one more indication of how sort of skewed the balance sheets are towards calling capitalism a kind of rational economic model. So as I say in the book, at no point in the history of American capitalism has the economy functioned successfully or at all without the oppressive subjection of women and people of color to its economic needs. So it's hardly a rational, let alone just form of democratic capitalism when we take these glaring problems into account. So what is the critique of design inside this kind of capitalist model? So I'm going to say a few things that are very general here, but I think as designers can probably recognize these comments as criticisms that have been brought up by many people in many different ways. But in general, criticisms about the way design participates in some of the I guess I would say negative impacts of capitalism. One, design manipulates people, creating desire for things they don't need and don't want, or that may be bad for them. Two, design creates production and consumption patterns that exacerbate environmental destruction and dismal, dangerous labor conditions. Three, design exploits and therefore perpetuates social hierarchies. could argue about any one of those points, or even argue about any one of the examples I've listed here to sort of illustrate those points. But these are some long-standing criticisms of the way that design has participated in the capitalist society. So, looking more specifically at the present, what are the critiques of 21st century design as it exists inside of this new sort of digital economy model of capitalism? And go into far more detail in the book here, but really name these three types of activity that I think are changing the way that design operates, and maybe sort of shifting the way that designers might even be either explicitly or implicitly thinking about the work that they're doing. And so I call them enclosure, creating platforms as consumption ecosystems, extraction, making use of microtransactions, the collection of behavioral data and attention as an economy, as well as manipulation, the idea that creating addictive or modifying the behavior of users of designed things is problematic. And so, again, many different examples to pull here, but I think the most, maybe one of the most egregious and sort of easily identifiable is what's called dark patterns, the use of dark patterns in UX design, which are essentially, designers, trying to make it more difficult for people to achieve what they want to do, maybe having them accidentally, purchase or do things that they don't necessarily mean to do, or essentially kind of like confusing them in ways that that their goals are thwarted in one way or another. And so there's a huge range of examples. I pulled a few here from a guy named, he's a British designer called Harry Brignall, who's collected these at darkpatterns.org and also on Twitter at darkpatterns. But just the idea that that UX designers who are ostensibly, thinking and working in a user-centered kind of way, which I would think would imply that it's in the user's best interest, are actually working, very directly against the user's best interest. And so this seems to me to be like a kind of a contradiction of the basic ethos of user-centered design, and is hard to see as being anything other than exploitative. It's maybe easy to call out the really egregious forms of this, but I actually think it's a much more of a slippery slope than it might appear. I think another real issue for designers practicing today is the way that we get kind of wrapped up in the discourse of capitalist design. And so I call in the book, business as usual design, BAUD or BAUD, the kind of logics of design under neoliberalism, in which we are all thinking very competitively. We have to compete with each other for work because we have to compete with each other for livelihoods. We have to compete with each other for healthcare, et cetera. And so we think very competitively. We act very competitively, and it has really created a kind of ethos that has not only attached to our personal lives, but also kind of blurs our attachments in the way that we attach ourselves to the companies that we work for, the brands that we create, et cetera. And so a really interesting article in the New York Times from 2019 called "Why Are Young People Pretending to Love Work?" Really asking why so many people post their deep love and deep conviction for the work that they do on social media, for example. And sort of pulling out of that, calling out that under this neoliberal logic of competition, it's like the thrill of competitive, self-directed work is particularly valorized by the idea of entrepreneurship, the idea of like rise and grind and do what you love. But all of that presumes that what you really love is putting in 18-hour days, maybe building a tech startup or something like that. I think the problems specific to design thinking are that even as design thinking has really kind of expanded the territory of what design can do, it does typically, it seems to me, get contained by kind of reducing problems to business problems. So design thinking claims to be able to take on much broader territory of kind of operations for design, but I think has paradoxically come with like a far more limited number of ways in which design thinks about what it can do inside those territories. So this is the sort of critique of what I've called business as usual design. And unfortunately, business as usual simply isn't working, as hopefully some of the points here have made. It's not working for the vast majority of people on this planet, and it's not working for the planet. So I think, to say that design's primary function is to operate in service to business, that its primary value is measured in profits, that its primary purpose is to create new and novel experiences for private gain, is for designers to really swallow whole the ideology of capitalism, and in particular its neoliberal form, as the dominant and only organizing principle of society, and not just one economic model, not just one historical economic model. So it's a long section. It's a long lecture so far already. I'm going to pause here and pose these reflection questions for you to think about or even answer if you like. But I'd like you just to think about how has design adapted to changing economies? In what ways have you noticed, or do you know that it has adapted? Do you think that the values and the goals of design have shifted along with those adaptations? How do you see design perpetuating or maybe making worse some of the negative impacts of capitalism, if you think that's happening? Have you, or how have you experienced the limitations of what design might do, or maybe what design could be by capitalism? Have you worked in some context or engaged in some context where you could see a design possibility or a way of designing that was constrained in some way? Can we think of design outside the logics and mindsets of capitalism? Can we actually think outside these logics, which are, really kind of wrap us up? Some call it the real world, but I would argue it is just a really powerful set of logics, a really powerful set of ideas that appear to be sort of the only ones, but most clearly are not.